Hello, I am Jim Franks, and this is Verse by Verse, a short podcast all about exploring the insights and lessons of the inspired Word of God, the Holy Bible. Today our scripture is found in Zechariah chapter 14 and verse 16. And it shall come to pass that everyone who is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. For those who believe the celebration of the holy days and festivals as outlined in the book of Leviticus came to an end after Jesus Christ have difficulty explaining this particular verse. Now let me get this straight. Holy days given to Israel and done away with by the death of Jesus Christ will have mandatory observance when Christ returns to this earth for the millennium? That explanation really makes no sense. In fact, Zechariah 14:16 is evidence that the holy days, and specifically the Feast of Tabernacles, will be observed during the millennial reign of Jesus Christ on this earth. But why? When one studies the scriptures that focus on the festivals, you begin to see that there is a deeper spiritual meaning behind each one. In fact, the festivals are called shadows of things to come in Colossians chapter 2. Now, I covered this on a previous podcast, so you may want to go back and give it a listen. The idea that the festivals as outlined in Leviticus chapter 23 were only for the Jews makes no sense when you understand that Colossae was a Gentile city with Jews and Gentiles being taught by Paul and others each Sabbath day, which was the seventh day of the week. And then to refer to the festivals as shadows of future events makes even less sense that these days had come to an end when Christ died. What is the purpose of these festivals, and specifically the Feast of Tabernacles? Do they have a purpose in the church today? It would seem they certainly did during the time of Paul, but exactly how? Let's consider the Feast of Tabernacles as described in Zechariah 14. For the Jews, the Feast of Tabernacles was a celebration of the fall festival and looked back on the time when the Israelites wandered in the wilderness. God took care of their every need, but they had to live in temporary dwellings until they finally arrived in the promised land of Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. For the church today, the Feast of Tabernacles looks forward to a future event. It is a forerunner of the 1,000-year millennial reign of Jesus Christ. Each year when one observes this 7-day festival, he is looking ahead to this millennial reign. It is deeply spiritual and not just physical. In the course of a year, there are 7 annual festivals as outlined in the book of Leviticus. In each one, we have a spiritual reminder of what God is doing with mankind. We worship God during these festivals, and we acknowledge His part in our lives. It isn't solely Jewish, but it is Christian, and so identified by the Apostle Paul in Colossians, and identified by the prophet Zechariah as a required observance during the reign of Jesus Christ on this earth.
Verse by Verse is a companion podcast to the Daily Bible Verse blog, which you can find on the Life, Hope, and Truth Learning Center. Check out the show notes for more.